Right on. So we are halfway through the semester officially now that we've ended week 9 and starting into week 10. And we are, let's see if we count week 10, 11, 12. We are 3 weeks away from your next develop it. So I showed you last week my output, and this week that we are just finishing because I reviewed your Learn Together from week 9. I given you a list of things I wanted you to think about and at least plan for. Now, like any plan, things could change, but the idea was really to give you time to really think about, reason about how you want to handle, the data requirements. It's funny, I saw that. How you're going to handle the input from the user as far as what kind of data, right? Because you're going to store that in local storage, bring that back out, give it the ability to edit something. And you saw in mine where what I gave the user the ability to edit wasn't what they necessarily directly inputted, which is okay because my input of running the game didn't make sense to let them edit games. So really and seems like some of you got the idea of what I wanted you to think through and took advantage of, and some of you kind of skirted around it. So, you're going to have to, and the other reason I do it at this point is that, and I think I heard a couple of you say this, like the sooner you start working on this, the better. Even if you're working on the part, and really it'd be like if I was to say the best practice in this case would be, it's like you've learned you've learned a certain series of things in the JavaScript course, the Udemy course, right? You're going to have to take and modify and create your own version of this implementation. So that's the perfect time after we finished that section. Otherwise, you might have to go back. And this is not necessarily bad either, but it just takes more time to go back and review some of those lectures, okay? So important to do that. Anyway, I feel like I didn't get everyone doing what I wanted last night. And if you didn't fully take advantage of it, I hope I do see you working on this sooner to help you, okay? Okay, so one of the things I want to say, and Jason posted this out on Discord, so I at least want to cover it because where you ended this week and week 9, meaning for the lecture, was really implementing the UUID. And I know that in Andrew's example, he says in your source tag in your index.html, you can point to this external site, but I think that started breaking even as of last semester. So what I did, and I want to show you, you can do the same. And you can see this in my week 10. So just as a preview, if you haven't taken a look. So in week 10, you're going to take the completed output, either the To-Do app or the Note app, and add something to it, okay? And I want you all to add unique features to it. So what I added, and this is in way of the discussion here, is the ability to capture the person's name who's going to do this, who's going to do the to-dos, and then you can have different people. You can change name in this case. Let me increase that a little bit so you can see it, right? So the rest of the functionality was the same. I just added the ability to have a name so you could have multiples there. But let me go ahead and say inspect this. And I'm going to go over to my sources tab. And so all of my JS is setting in here. So this file right here, which is the UUID, and this is how I recommend doing it, is just grab, and I believe there are links also in the course that I talked about on Discord, but you can just grab this content, copy it, right? Just copy it. And then on your local system, just create. Now, again, at this point, I recommend having a subdirectory for JS and then just creating a UUID.js and then copying that content in there. And then in this case, I'll just show it in the to-do file, which typically you have an index file, but in this case, I left it because that's the way you did it. Then I just created a a script tag that had that UUID there. Now that's how I handled it. I know that if you look around at documentation, I think this is what Jason ran into. There's a require. The require to bring in somebody else's JS or just that bringing in an external file requires a little bit more of a workflow process to bring in. And I'm trying to keep this kind of simple so we don't run into some of those externalities. But you know, you can also play around and look at that. So this is how I recommend if you, for some reason, didn't get the UUID working in that section, because you're going to need to get it working for this week in this week 10. Okay. So I just want to go over that just in case you run into that. And therefore you have, at least from what I've shown you, a way to do that. Now, so if you have any questions about that, reach out. But as I said, we're a couple of weeks away from at this point, right? We're 3 weeks away from our next dev. And I just want to clarify, because I really appreciated some of the comments I got about people being still maybe a little unclear about how the code review works and deadlines. So I'm going to do is preview, and I meant to do this last week, so I'm going to do it now, that week, right? So what I've done is the week that the Dev 1 is due, I'm just going to lay out my office hours. I'm not going to add additional ones. And what you can do here is you can look at this, and if these times work for you, you can sign up for them. And if you need times outside of these times, then you can reach out to me, and you and I can work out something that works for both of us. And what I've done is I've color coded this. Now I'm not releasing this schedule yet, but I'll release it probably maybe, let's see, week 10, probably in week 11. Okay, so in this case, just to be clear, the reason I've color coded it is if you come in for your code review in this part of the week, right? Again, some of you took advantage of this idea of the review versus or assistance. Still, it's fine to sign up for either one. But if you're coming in for your review at this point, then, and you miss something, you can still change the code up until the due date, right? So the due date is going to be 10/29, Thursday at midnight, really when I get up Friday morning. Okay, so that's why I've coded these dates to be before the due date. You can change the code, trying to make that more clear. Then after the due date, if you're doing reviews at this point, okay, because by the way, and you might wonder, can you still do assistance? You can, but you need to have done a review by that following Thursday night in order to get the most points. If you're submitting after the due date, Thursday night, Friday morning, okay, then if you're submitting your dev_1, it is late and it is graded as late. So let's just stop there. And what I want in your reply is, do you now have questions about the process that will happen that week? And again, I've laid out the week it's due and the week after it's due. And I haven't added any dates to these, are just my regular office hours. But you can totally reach out to me. And again, if at all possible, I will work it out with you to if there's times that you need that aren't listed here. Okay? Okay, so that was my goal. That was my main goal today, besides just to kind of look at our week 10 Learn Together and talk about the UUID. We will finish up section 8 this week. And then, you have section 9, which section 9 is really, and it's kind of an interesting section if I go down and look at it, because it's really expanding. The biggest thing here is we're going to refactor our code to allow for arrow functions, our functions to allow, it's just a shorter syntax, but there's also some other things related to arrow functions you want to make sure you understand. Looking at ternary operators, which are great. Understanding this idea of truthy and falsy values, what can happen with coercion, catching errors, such an important, handling them, right? So these are important things that you will do and understand, and you will see, and this is the other thing as we finish up that week, that section in the week that it's due. But one of the things, and I mentioned this last time, right, besides adding about using Chrome DevTools, and this is part of your code review, right, is understanding and following the the styling guide, the coding styling guide, which you can check this out and what is in there. All right, using constant let, using arrow functions, right, wherever possible, unless there's a reason specifically you need to use the traditional one, and then you can specify why that's true. Use camel case. File names need to be lowercase, right? Most of your code needs to be inside of a function, right? Don't use jQuery or other libraries, right? And this is kind of a joke in the industry, right? Pure JS. There's actually a pure.js because it's just JS, right? Make comments, right? Make sure your code test all the branches of your code. And what that means is if there's an if block, there's checking for particular conditions. You need to make sure you have code that tests those blocks to make sure they work, right? And this is kind of the last one we've already added to the core requirements, right? Walking through and then troubleshooting your code because it's such a great thing to know how to do. And in my belief, makes you much better at this. Okay. Now, I noticed a couple of you last night when I read your thinking about Dev 1, you had changed your topics. You want to reach out to me and chat with me about that. Okay. So you're clear about that. And here's the thing, right, is implement 2 examples of JavaScript not covered in this course. And I believe I covered mine. I might cover it next week, but I do have a video, I believe, that was done last semester for my Dev 1. Let me just check real quick. Maybe I'll review that. Oh, I don't. Okay, so I'll need to handle that. I'll show you what are the examples. I believe I used a function well, I have to go remember what it was I did there. So I'll show that. Maybe I'll put that on my notes for next week or any other questions. But the big deal that I want you to think about for this reply, or I want to see in your reply, is did my laying out of the schedule for Dev 1 help clarify the way that works? And if not, what else would you like to know? Okay? All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. It is great weather in California. Unfortunately, we still have some fires going up at the top part of the state. So we send everyone affected by whatever the many different things in this world's going on. We just send them all kinds of good juju. All right. Have a great one. Peace out.